Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is Stephen Nehrenz with This Week in Weather.
Howdy everyone, Meteorologist Stephen Nehrenz here from the News on 6 Digital Studio. Welcome to This Week in Weather on this September 16th. As always, really appreciate you joining me for another edition of This Week in Weather. Got, as always, plenty of things to talk about as we head into the final official days of summer. Fall officially begins next week, and so I know the question now is that fall weather that we had a week or two ago going to return? We'll talk a little bit about that coming up in just a second. As always, you know where to find me if you got questions, comments, suggestions on what you want to see and hear on This Week in Weather. My email address, Facebook page on the screen, and of course commenting on the News on 6 on our YouTube channel as well. And by the way, I'll mention this again at the end. Starting here in the next week or two, I believe actually next week, we're going to have these videos posted on our brand new News on 6 weather YouTube channel. So when that actually officially happens, again, expecting to start doing that next week, I'll be kind of pointing you that direction as well. In addition to this being on the main News on 6 YouTube channel, again, we'll start pointing you towards the News on 6 weather YouTube channel for This Week in Weather when that starts up. Again, expecting that to be starting next week. So pretty exciting. We're excited to have that additional platform specifically for our weather content on our News on 6 on YouTube. And so I'll start pointing you that way when we officially do that. Okay, so obviously we've been into the summer temperatures again over the last several days. It hasn't been brutal or record-breaking or anything like that, but it's just been kind of the reminder that what we had at the end of August, the beginning of September was, false fall, fake fall, whatever you want to call it. We've had some more rain, but some of us have started to dry out a little bit. So I'm actually starting with some rainfall statistics, all right? And obviously, you know the deal. As we've gone through the entire year as a whole, it's still been a very wet 2025, especially as we went through spring and the first half of summer. Even though we've had some drier stretches kind of on the back half of summer here, we're still in the top 10 for wettest years on record up to this point, up through, year to date, meaning up to this date, so through the middle of September. 8th wettest, but if you've been watching, as we've kind of updated these stats, especially through the summer, we've been kind of, we were up near the top of the list there a month or two ago through the first half of summer. We've been kind of slowly sliding down that top 10 list. I mean, we are still way above normal. We're still more than a foot above normal on rainfall for the years. I mean, so we're still way up there, but those numbers have started backtracking on us a little bit because we've been drying out somewhat over the tail end of the summer. Now, again, this is, a lot of times in summertime, really any season, but it's especially in summertime when we're dealing with like locally heavy storms, the rainfall totals can be all over the map. I wanted to show you this. This kind of highlights this specifically over the last 30 days. I'm going to go 30-day totals and then 60-day totals, and I will take this full screen again so you can read those numbers just a little bit better. Rainfall totals over the last 30 days. Again, notice that, some areas from, say, Tulsa to Pawnee, closer to about 2 inches of rain over the last month, but then there's some areas down around Poto and Stigler, 4.5 to 5 inches, up around Fanita, over 6 inches of rain in the last 30 days. And these are, again, very, what we say, site-specific, meaning even in these towns, you may have different totals that if you keep track with your own rain gauge. Like here in Tulsa, there are parts of the metro that have had more than 2 inches of rain over the last 30 days, but kind of the official reporting sites here, both from the Tulsa International Airport, and then we also have the Oklahoma Mesnet sites that we get those totals from as well, which are very, very reliable. So that's why we use them. But again, your backyard gauges may have had something different. So we've all had rain, but some of us have had way more than others over the past month. We go over the past 2 months, the past 60 days. So this gets us back into, mid to late July, and that's about when the extremely soggy pattern that we were in started to finally shut down. Around the middle of July is when it finally started to change into typical summertime. And then we had, drier conditions, late July, early August, more heat, and then eventually, of course, more rain came back in as we went through August and even into the very beginning of September. So these are the 60-day rainfall totals going back to that point. And again, a wide range, right? So you're seeing that Tulsa over the last, 60 days, or the last 2 months, on average about 3.5 inches of rain. Again, parts of the metro have had more than that. I'd say especially the south side of the metro has had a little bit more than that around Glenpool, Bixby, even Broken Arrow, some of those areas. But then look at the wide range of totals. Pawnee, barely 2 inches of rain over the last 60 days. That's pretty dry, even in summertime. But then you get to McAllister, almost 8 inches of rain. Wilburton, almost 9 inches of rain. Even up around Coffeyville, Kansas, close to 6 inches of rain over the last 2 months. So kind of a wide range there. So it's no surprise that we're actually starting to see, I know those are for some of us, some heavy rainfall totals, but not for everyone. So it's not a surprise that we've actually had some short-term drought conditions kind of start creeping back in. Now, again, from a long-term sense, we're still doing very well. It's still been an extremely wet year. This is more just kind of short-term, abnormally dry or moderate drought conditions that have snuck back into parts of eastern Oklahoma. But it just goes to show that, some additional rain chances here down the line would not be the worst thing in the world. And some of us clearly need it more than others. And we do have some rain chances to come as we head into the next several days. But this is a good way of describing that, kind of the deficit that we've had over the last about month to 2 months. Now this is over the last 60 days. So what you're seeing on the map here is how far above or below normal that we are on rainfall in the last 60 days. And you see most of us are in the negative here, meaning that we are, like in Tulsa for specifically over the last 60 days, negative 2.4. That means we are 2.4 inches below normal on rainfall over the last 60 days. Pawnee, almost 5 inches of rain below normal over the last 60 days. That's no surprise that that's one of the areas, kind of the Pawnee County, Payne County area, where some moderate drought has started to creep back in. You see up around Miami, well below normal. And other areas doing a little bit better. Southeastern Oklahoma, you see around McAllister, Wilburton, you've had more healthy rainfall totals over the past 60 days where you're actually just a hair above normal on the rain for the last 2 months here. But I would say the majority of us over the last 30, but especially over the last 60 days, since that extremely soggy period ended, has been running a little behind on rainfall, and some of us way behind on rainfall. So even though, like I've been saying, in a long-term sense, we're still doing really well on rainfall. Most of us stayed green the entire summer because of how much rain we had. This is when we have kind of that short-term drought try to creep in, which can often happen at the end of the summer. If there's going to be a time period when rainfall really drops off on us, the tail end of the summer is often a typical time for that to happen. So we do need to see some rain chances showing up, and we do have that happening here. So you're taking a look at the big picture, where we've been the last several days. Of course, the end of August, beginning of September was that early fall setup. We had that strong northwest flow where that was, helping pull cold fronts into the area, and that's that flow pattern that promotes much cooler air, say from the northern portions, the northern hemisphere, especially from Canada, kind of barreling south into the plains and into our area. That's what we did have the last several days. We've had that, the big old spinning H there in the middle of the screen. That's that mid to upper level high pressure ridge that we often call the heat dome. You've heard me refer to it that way a lot. It's been in control. That's been bringing the heat back in and keeping our rain chances mostly limited to just kind of that little pop-up variety. Well, the last day or two, it's been starting to weaken a little bit. We still have kind of an odd jet stream setup right now. We've referred to this before on air. I've got the text on the screen there kind of at the top. What's called an omega block pattern. It might be hard to tell, but you notice how I've got the arrows drawn on there so you can kind of see where the stronger jet stream flow is. You see how wavy it is, and it almost looks like the signal omega, the Greek letter omega. That's why it's called the omega block pattern. But what happens is you have that upper level ridge that kind of gets stuck, and then there's upper level lows on either side of it, and that can be a pattern that has a tendency to not move very much, or we can kind of get stuck under it for the time being until either the ridge or those upper level lows decide to kind of strengthen it and take over and push the jet stream along. So that's where we've been the last couple of days as that ridge has started to weaken. Now here's where we're going to kind of head through the end of the week. Like I said, the last several official days of summer, next Monday, fall officially begins. So I know everyone's been saying, okay, when's the next fall cold front? Kind of like the ones that we had a couple weeks ago. We're still searching for it. So just watch the big picture here as we go through late in the week. That upper level ridge is kind of back and forth, back and forth. Now, what I did with this, I'm going to go ahead and take a full screen again so you can see it well. How I drew the arrows on that last graphic so you could see where that main jet stream flow is. I've done that again here But notice how I have them drawn well to the north. What I'm indicating there is that that's where the much stronger, much more persistent jet stream flow, upper level flow is. These storm systems are kind of dipping south under relatively weak upper level flow. But that much stronger jet stream flow to the north is kind of what we need to dive our way to get us a much bigger cool down, kind of a fall cool down. That's why I have it drawn that way. So through the end of the week, we have these kind of weak storm systems swinging through. Late Wednesday, Thursday, even into Friday should bring us at least some shower and storm chances. Now watch what happens here by the end of the weekend into early next week. That stronger jet stream flow tries to dip back to the south. This would be towards the beginning of next week. Again, next Monday, that's the official start of fall. And the forecast models and the guidance has been kind of off and on, back and forth on if we'll get kind of that bigger jet stream to stick around, or that stronger jet stream flow rather, to stick around and bring us a bigger push of cooler air. Here's the deal though, as we head into next week, notice, it kind of starts to retreat again. There will be a lot of fluctuations here over the next several days as far as how much hotter will it be? Will we get a big cool down? Will it just be kind of warm weather with some rain and storm chances? I would say the general trend is you're looking into the middle of next week on the big picture is that upper level ridge isn't necessarily just completely shutting down storm chances and cool downs, but we'll say kind of minor to moderate cool downs. As long as that much stronger jet stream flow that you see there on the graphic stays to the north, as long as the ridge keeps pushing that to the north, it's going to be pretty tough for us to get that kind of classic like early fall cold front that barrels in and really cools us off and we go, okay, here's the change in seasons. It'll happen eventually, but we may still, I think, still be waiting a little while longer, kind of heading towards the tail end of the month of September before we maybe see a bigger pattern shift on that front. All right, back to the end of the week here. Of course, recording this on Tuesday. We're talking college football Friday into Saturday, so I always preface this by saying there could be some changes over the next couple of days. I want you to continue to check in with Travis and Stacia, Alan, our full weather team through the end of the week on updates on these forecasts Friday into Saturday. This has been holding pretty steady so far. So, of course, a reminder, OSU versus Tulsa is on Friday evening in Stillwater for OSU and TU. And the weather looks pretty good. Temperatures, I should say, look pretty good overall. It'll be a warm Friday afternoon. Tailgating temperatures low to mid 80s, a little on the humid side of things. And there's at least a slight chance for a few off and on showers. So far, again, the pattern that we've been seeing up to this point is that the rain chances that we have kind of like Wednesday into Thursday should be diminishing on Friday. That's what we'll keep an eye on for the possibility that maybe rain chances creep back in Friday evening for OSU versus Tulsa. As of now, though, rain chances should be low. Kickoff temperatures warm, but certainly doable, not as hot as some of us were last weekend. And then that would bring us down into the 70s late Friday evening as that game progresses, which should feel very, very nice. And then on Saturday for OU's big game back at home in Norman against Auburn, pretty warm weather and, again, pretty humid. And at least a slight chance for showers. Again, we've got a few more days to go. Like I said, check back in as the week goes along and see if there's any updates on that. As of now, it doesn't appear that rain and storm chances should be a huge hassle on Saturday if you're going to be down in Norman. It's just not something we can totally rule out at this point. So we'll be watching that as the week goes along. It looks like pretty warm temperatures, though. Again, kickoffs at 2:30 for OU against Auburn. Tailgating temperatures, let's say, about 3 hours before the game, upper 70s, and then climbing into the mid 80s as the game goes along. Winds look to be relatively light at this point. And again, it can be a little on the humid, sticky side of things. Again, not quite as hot as some of us were last weekend, but temperatures in the 80s, humid conditions, not a lot of a breeze, kind of right in the warmest part of the day, Saturday afternoon. It'll be pretty warm in Norman for that game. I mean, it should turn out great again, especially as long as we can keep the rain chances away. But I would plan on some warm and humid conditions. As far as when fall officially begins, that's next Monday at 1:19 p.m. specifically. Monday, September 22nd is when fall officially begins. Again, we're still looking for the fall weather, right? This is just kind of the glance ahead on the temperature trend over the next several days. As rain storm chances arrive late in the week, it kind of settles our temperatures back down near normal. But again, there's just no, like real deal fall cold front barreling in. So as you see, I like to show this graphic to kind of give you a comparison of how far above or below normal our temperatures will be. Normal would be the line right in the middle there. And notice from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're kind of back and forth within a couple degrees of normal. which we often will just call seasonable temperatures, meaning right about where we're supposed to be for this time of year. And that extends into the beginning of next week. I've got the little icon on next Monday, and that's when fall officially begins. So we're still searching for that, fall cold front's just not showing up yet. And this is just a general glance ahead. Again, these outlooks change on a daily basis as well. But the overall trend, not only for us, but for a good portion of the country, is that you can see, if you can read that calendar, I'll go full screen again if you can't read those numbers as well. This would be kind of the long-term outlook as we head towards the end of the month, the last week of September. There's still a fairly strong signal that warmer than normal conditions will be sticking with us, not only here in Green Country, but for a good portion of the country. Now, again, I showed you in the big picture a few minutes ago that I do think that as we get towards those last days of September, that stronger jet stream to the north may start to kind of exert its will a little bit more, start pushing bigger cool downs further into the country. So again, this end of summer, pattern won't last forever, but this often happens as we get into mid to late September. Summer's last gasp just doesn't quite want to let go. As far as precipitation chances, because as I mentioned off the top, we do need some rain, some of us more than others, but we do need a good drink or two of water in Green Country. And as we head towards the tail end of the month, the precipitation outlook, this would be towards, the middle of next week, and then this will be the outlook further down the line. There's no just extremely strong signals of like wetter than normal conditions returning. That doesn't mean it won't rain at all. And it, I do think we will be getting some showers and storms later this week, and also I think we'll have some chances next week as well. But there's no strong signs at the moment of just like widespread heavy downpours for everyone over that next week to 2 week pattern. But hopefully enough that we can kind of settle the dust a little bit for some areas that have started to dry out pretty quickly. One more thing I wanted to update you on, because we are right in like the climatological peak of hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin. But as you've no doubt noticed, it's been relatively quiet for a while. There have been several named storms, but we're kind of running behind the trend as far as the forecast number of storms. Now, again, I want to remind you that the hurricane season is far from done. But we're looking at way out in the Atlantic, and there are a couple of areas of disturbance as they may eventually become named storms over the next several days. I've got one highlighted area. Again, this is way out in portions of the eastern Atlantic, well to the east of the Caribbean, that we'll be watching through the end of the week, through the weekend. This is where we're at up to this point. The yellow kind of orange shaded names are the named storms we've had so far. We've had 6 named storms, which again, we're kind of behind the trend, which is not a bad thing at all, that we have not had as many named storms as thought possible so far this hurricane season. But again, I will continue to emphasize that does not mean that hurricane season is over. Now, again, I'll also say that we're not anticipating anything that impacts Green Country anytime soon. But this just kind of gives you the gauge of what we call, I'd say, typical tropical activities. Like this is the climatological, like the long-term average of like when the peak of named storms and hurricanes happen. And I'll take this full screen one more time so you can read that a little better. Notice how it's kind of like a bell curve almost, right? And notice where that peaks out. I drew the yellow line in the middle. That's where we are right now. So we have literally just crossed over what is like typically the peak of Atlantic hurricane season, which means we usually start trending down from here, but that also means that we are far from over. I mean, look at where we go all the way through October. Notice how there's still, medium to high chances for named storms well into October. So far from done on that front, but yes, it has been quieter than expected over the last several weeks in particular. A lot of factors that play into that jet stream flow that has been occurring. That Saharan dust plume that we talk about a lot, that we talk about, especially in the first half of the summer. We discuss that a lot as we see it come off the Sahara, from the Sahara across the Atlantic into our area, and we can see the dust in the air, creates those sunsets. But it also is something that can limit tropical activity, and it's something that's been fairly persistent this summer and into the beginning of fall here that has limited that activity. So there's a lot of things that have gone into that. And I just point that out to say that season is far from over, but it has been, less active than thought it might be. All right, that is all for this week and weather. Again, as I've been mentioning the last few weeks, I am working on having more guests join me. I know I've done it a couple times here, and I know it's had a pretty good response of having guests join me to chat about weather. It's this month, without going into too many details, is a very busy month here behind the scenes, so I just haven't had time to include guests on This Week in Weather this month. But I am working on that going forward, especially as we head into October, about some hoping to have one or two of the storm trackers join me. I have some other guests that I think you'll find interesting as well. And also next week, we're going to be talking about, we will officially be in a fall, and we'll be discussing more about that as well, and kind of where we think fall is headed, and it's had some folks asking about fall foliage. We'll have some discussions about that next week as well. But again, a reminder, you can always find us streaming on our News on 6 YouTube channel. And again, the plan is starting next week that we will be posting these on our brand new News on 6 weather YouTube channel as well. So when that's up and running, I will make sure to point you that direction as well. Again, that should be starting next week. As always, appreciate you joining me here on This Week in Weather. Folks, take care of each other, be good to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio live stream from the Bob Mills Weather Center. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest weather updates to keep you safe and informed.